Welcome to the Simply Authentic podcast with Angie and Tanya, where we hope to inspire you to dream big and push past your fear, empower you to take charge of your own life, and challenge you to be the most authentic self you can be. Welcome back to the Simply Authentic podcast. I'm Angie Mullings.
And I'm Tanya Murfin. Welcome back, guys. Today, we are excited to have Cassie Dimmick with us, and she is a registered dietitian and exercise physiologist.
Yes,
did I get that right?
You did.
Okay, perfect.
I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
I know, same. So I
you.
met Cassie last year. I was on the hunt for a dietitian to come into our real estate office and just give us all an update on nutrition and labels and at 52, what should I be looking at? And so that's how we met.
Yes.
And we enjoyed you coming in and talking to us. So when I told Angie about you, we were wanting you to come in and educate all of our listeners of nutrition and exercise and just all the things that, being the first of the year, we all get a good mindset, a new mindset to start something new. And I'm going to get back in shape and I'm going to eat better. And gosh, we all want that. So, Cassie, you're going to tell us today how to get there.
I have a perfect answer. It's in a pill. You just take it and you're good to go. No.
Perfect.
It's magic. It's really magic.
So to start us off, tell us about yourself, what your background is in, and where you currently work and so forth.
Yes, I own a fitness and nutrition center called Achieving Your Best here in Springfield. So, and I love what I do. I've been in this field for 23 years, which is crazy to think about. I do love my job. I'm passionate about it. And really it comes from my own experience of confusion and not thriving when I was younger. And so back in the 80s and 90s, it was really before the internet, but there were just people that had lots of advice, lots of diets, diet culture. And it really was confusing. And I wasn't healthy. I wasn't at a healthy weight. And none of my family was healthy. We didn't exercise. I actually quit the one team I was in just to get out of PE because they made us run a mile,
Really?
which is kind of funny.
That is funny to hear now.
And my favorite foods were, I was from South Texas, fried stuff and just, my snack after school was like chips and cheese and, nacho type things. Yep. And so I just really, again, was confused when I got to college and I just knew I didn't feel good. And so I took a nutrition class and that really changed my life. And I also signed up for a 5K, which was way out of my comfort zone. And I actually trained and completed it and did okay, in it. And so that was kind of the start of my journey to learn how food and exercise or movement can really change your trajectory. Yeah. And again, my genetics aren't great, lots of diabetes and overweight and heart disease and dementia in my family. And so I'm really, over the last, 30 years, I've been experimenting with what I can do to prevent that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet. Yeah, those genetics somehow creep in, even if you do live a mostly healthy lifestyle. We still are built how we're built. So
yes, we are. So there's, and I think a lot of that is helpful to think about because so many people are unhappy because they're trying to be someone else or be like someone else.
Right.
And, really we are all unique. And, my business name is Achieving Your Best because I really do want to try to help people thrive for themselves with whatever they're dealt in life. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah. You have to be realistic. It's great to dream about, or have aspirations or goals, but you do have to live with the body you were given and the genetics you were given. So,
yes.
Yes. So to start us off, tell us if someone comes to you and says, I don't feel good. I'm a little overweight. I'm out of shape. I don't have any good habits. What is the first things and in what order would you tell them to get started?
Yes, very good question. So I think a lot of people come in and they want just the answers. You know, tell me what to do.
Yep.
And so I wish it was that simple. And as you know, because like you said, you know, people starting over, you know, why are we starting over every year? Why are we not able to continue with healthy habits?
Right.
And so a lot of that is, you know, up in our mind, you know, and so, and it's how we think and our perceptions of things. And so I do spend a lot of time with clients really helping explore where they want to go, like what does thriving look like to them? Because it could look like something totally different to me, you know, and you, you know, so it can be different for everyone. So first figuring out where they want to go. And a lot of that people automatically think of external things, you know, I want to weigh X amount or whatever. But I really try to get them to see what do they want to feel like? What types of things do they want to be able to do in life? Is it play with their grandkids? Is it run through the airport? Is it fit in a ride at Silver Dollar City, you know, without being nervous that they aren't going to fit? You know, so what does that look like? And really helping them define that for themselves. Because if you don't have that strong why, then it's really hard for that day-to-day motivation to be there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I always start there.
Okay. Okay.
So
love that.
Yeah. And then in terms of it's individual, right? What they want to achieve, figuring out their why, what their goal is, and then do you talk specifically? They go hand in hand, nutrition and exercise, right? So do you come up with a plan that complements both of those aspects then for that individual?
Yes, I do. They do go hand in hand, and they're both very important. And so some people find it easier to focus on one thing at a time. And you know, there is no expectation from me as far as how fast we get somewhere. Typically that's from the client. Like I want to be there today or tomorrow or whatever, you know, but these things do take time. And so I try to help them with realistic goals. And sometimes if you change 20 things at once, then you feel overwhelmed. And so if they can focus on both, that's great. But sometimes people just want to focus on nutrition or just want to focus on exercise. And if you are taking a step forward in your health, you are making progress. And so, and oftentimes people have an all or nothing attitude. And I think that's one of the biggest things that is a challenge in this field, because when people aren't doing well, they're totally off.
Right.
And so oftentimes. And so then, you know, it's just like, well, I'll worry about that later, you know? And so my goal is to help them with, okay, I'm always doing something for my health because my health is important to me for these reasons that we've established. And it may not always be amazing and it may not always be exactly what I want it to be, but I'm always thinking about it and trying to do something. And that's a hard skill, I think, you know, especially when we're younger, we're like, we can do all this stuff, we have all this time, you know, and we can really focus on ourselves. And then as you get older, things get in the way, careers and families and all this stuff. And so trying to create skills that help people along. But both are important, and I'm always helping people try to get both to the level that we know helps health.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. From a nutrition standpoint, I remember when I went to a nutritionist, and this has probably been 10 years ago, one thing that stuck with me is when you go to the grocery store, you shop the outside. You stay away from the middle for the most part.
Yes.
Is that something that you adhere to as well? Something
Absolutely.
Like that?
Yes. And if you start out there too when you're fresh, you know, and so because sometimes by the time you're halfway done shopping, you're like, I am over this. I'm ready to get out of here. You know, and then too, it's just like your plate. If you fill it up with fresh produce, you don't have as much room for everything else. So if you start in the fruit and veggies section, that's always where I start. Every time I go to the store, then you can fill up your cart with at least half full groceries from fruits and veggies. And then you know, okay, I'm going to eat half fruits and veggies from what I'm eating, and you don't have as much room to put the other stuff in. So, that's a really good thing. And two, you know, those foods are going to be more whole foods. They're not going to be messed with and as processed. And that is something that you'll see a lot more research on that's coming out in the ultra processed food industry, and how much of a negative health impact that's having with us. And I say ultra processed, but that's even a lot of health type foods. They have health halos because of marketing. And so that's something else that I really try to help educate people on, is that just because it appears healthy, like a protein bar or something like that, that doesn't necessarily mean that it is, because ultra processed food is just really not the best thing for us to have a lot of. Yeah.
So labels, that kind of leads me to that question. And I was thinking about that this morning because I got my box of cereal out, and it's not Fruit Loops. It's Kellogg's K or one of those. So it's not, I don't think it's terrible for you, but as I was thinking about seeing you today, I was reading how much sugar it has and how much sodium it has. So how relevant is it to us today to be reading food labels?
Yeah, that's a great question. Food labels are helpful, and but I do say it's one data point, just like your weight. For example, it is part of the story. It's not the whole story, because the food industry can be tricky, and they know what people are looking for on labels, and they can do a lot of things to make something appear healthier than it is. And they also know that if they put like it in a brown box, for example, or some of the words that they use, people are going to think that it's healthy and pay more for it. They're going to buy it more, so there's a lot that goes into marketing of food products. And so the food label does have to be accurate, and they do try to, control that. They've done a lot of work on that, which is awesome. Like putting the whole pint of ice cream nutrition facts, for example, instead of half a cup, because who eats half a cup of ice cream?
Nobody.
I don't, right? And so, so they have tried to help consumers. They also have put added sugar instead of just total sugars, because some sugar in like dairy products and fruit can be healthy, so not all sugar is going to have negative health effects. So they do try to give you some of that information. So added sugar is important to look at. We do know from research that 25 grams or less is what is recommended for health for the day. And that would be a good thing if you're like, I don't know what to start with. That's actually a kind of a fun little experiment, is to write down how many grams of added sugar you get throughout the day and see where you are. And that kind of gives you an indication too of how much processed food you're eating. Because that's typically going to be in processed food. So things that people will cut out, like say, I'm not going to put sugar in my coffee, but I'm going to eat, cereal and granola bars and sugar sweetened yogurts and things all day long, and those have a much bigger impact, even salad dressings. I mean, so many things, marinades and meats. I mean, there's just, it's just in a lot of foods. And so looking at what you're doing and trying to get that 25 grams or less a day is a good thing to look at for labels. And then the calories are also can be important. But then also the food labels has the numbers, a lot of people don't really understand kind of what that means. So unless you know how many calories you need, how much protein you need, then that may not be as helpful for you. But you can see if a food is going to provide you with protein, carbs, or fat. Those are the three macronutrients, so having balance with meals, having meals with protein, carbs, and fats in them is something that we try to help people do. And so that can help you see, like your cereal, that cereal in particular has a little bit of protein in it. It has carbs in it, but it's probably not going to be a lot of protein. So for breakfast, I'd say, okay, these are my carbs, but I need to add in something that has some more protein in it, and so, and then I'm always a proponent of fruits and veggies. So I'd also have you throw a fruit in with that cereal too, to get some fiber, and you can look at fiber as well, but fiber that they add to foods is not shown to be as healthy as fiber that's found naturally in foods. And again, that's one of those tricks that they can play. And so the next thing I'd have you look at is the label, underneath the label where the ingredients are. Because the ingredients are kind of like a movie, the act of the movie, that whenever they're trying to tell you who was in the movie, they are in order of appearance. So the people that they list first, that's the most that they're in the movie, just like the food product. So so the stars of the food are going to be listed first. And so so if you have something and the first ingredient is sugar, for example, then that's going to be what's mostly in that product. And so food industry also knows we're looking at that. So now sometimes they'll divide the sugar up in like 4 different types of sugar so they can put it lower on the list. But looking at what it is this something that you would make in your kitchen, for example, then that might be a product that is a little bit less processed. If it's a bunch of stuff you can't pronounce, that might be a red flag.
Right. Yes. Yes.
And then you can see, is it really from whole grains? There are some protected words, but the food label is a lot more complicated than people think it is, just even talking about it
Really
right now.
is.
Yeah. I have a gluten sensitivity, and I read the book Wheat Belly, and I realized that what we're eating as wheat, talking to the processed part of the conversation, is not really wheat anymore. It's not wheat like my great-grandfather had. It's not truly wheat. It's so processed that it's not even that anymore, which is what, as I understand it, is causing the allergies that we have to certain foods like gluten. So and this has been going on. I've been gluten-free for probably 6 years now. And people say, well, when I go out to eat or whatever, they'll say, well, this is gluten-free. And I said, yeah, but it's still got the sugar in it. So I'm going to try. It was headaches that gluten was giving me. So, and at the same time, I did lose weight after I cut gluten out of my diet. And so to go and replace that with another sugar, it's not doing my body any good, right? I'm still, yes, I'm not having wheat anymore as it's known today, but I am still replacing it with a sugar, which is still not 100% what I would want to do. It's not healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And that is a common issue with people, whether you're trying to restrict calories or restrict anything, is oftentimes the foods that you're replacing it with aren't necessarily healthy either. And that's that kind of processed food, like you mentioned, something to look for. So ideally you would replace gluten with a whole food type of other carb, like a sweet potato or, things like that.
Right.
And so for a healthier nutrition balance. And then it's the same thing too with people are trying to do plant-based eating, for example, and they have a bunch of processed, plant burger type things or, things.
Right.
I mean, it kind of goes with
Black
all different types
or whatever.
And some of them are healthier and some of them aren't, but it's kind of one of those, if y'all remember like the Snackwell's cookies, when everything was low fat.
I was thinking about those last night.
Yes. And so, and they were considered healthy because they were low fat. And now, gluten is kind of one of the big things right now with gluten free, and people think it's healthy because it's gluten free, and that's not necessarily true, So,
right.
Do
you have a thought on which flour-based product is better? Is there one that's like rice or quinoa or whatever? Is there one that's better than the other if you're substituting for white flour?
Yeah, the quinoa has a little bit more protein in it.
Okay.
Rice flour tends to have a little bit more glycemic index if that's, but if you pair it with protein, that typically helps. But, so some of it kind of depends. But there are a lot of good products out there if you're in the mood for pasta or, things like that.
Right.
And they do have like brown rice pasta, which would be made from brown rice, and so, but just really looking at the label and making sure that it is a whole food if possible. So if it's rice, it's brown rice. Quinoa would be a whole food anyways, but things like, and for dairy products too, kind of on the flip side, things that are whole food based, like hemp milk made from hemp seeds. And you can, you can do a lot of that stuff at home pretty easily. But a lot of the substitutions are pretty highly processed, and things like with tapioca, that's pretty processed, just to, that's in a lot of gluten-free stuff too, so it's still, if you think about using a gluten-free bread or a gluten-free pasta, it still would need to be part of a balanced meal with some protein and vegetables, and that kind of thing with it as most of your nutrition. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Those
Definitely.
are good tips for you, Angie.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for anybody, honestly, because if you, again, speaking as someone who realized I had a gluten allergy, as I started looking at the process of white flour, talk about something that's heavily processed. It's white flour, right? It's the refined sugar. It's all of those things. So looking at, just for anybody, whether you have a gluten allergy or not, I think it's interesting to know that there are substitutes out there and you can I can bake a cake that using quinoa flour, and it's going to be healthier than, because we all have, well, I shouldn't say all, I have a sweet tooth. So, if you got to have that little hit of sugar, why not try to make it healthier, whether you have an allergy or not?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. So yes, and trying to make things healthier and have less sugar and then more whole grains, real food, that's something that we do at home, and so kind of bringing it back 100 years, of our eating, trying to get back to where things used to be. And I think in this day and age, it's pretty unrealistic for a lot of people to like grow your own food, mill your own flour, that kind of stuff. Right. For them, some people can do it, and that's amazing.
Yes.
And so, but if anyone's feeling discouraged out there, there are a lot of products out there and a lot of real foods that are very affordable that you can use to get healthy carbs if you're gluten free.
Yeah. So tell us what healthy looks like. What does a healthy nutritionist meal look like from your perspective? What should we be eating every day, and how much of it? So the 5 food groups, how relevant is that still?
Yeah, the 5 food groups aren't as relevant anymore just because, some of that was very industry driven, I would say, back in the day, and so what we know just from population studies and looking at research with humans. And so it's hard to do human research in nutrition if you can even think about it, to try to follow someone their whole life.
Right. Sure.
So we do a lot of association. So there isn't a lot of, if you follow this diet your whole life, then this will happen because there was a control group and there was, and so the research, like I said, is going to be association, not necessarily causation. So just so I get that out there, if anyone's like, this is absolutely the best for you, they just don't know that. We just don't know that. So you have to look at preferences. But if I were to say, okay, the healthiest eating pattern for most research is Mediterranean type eating, and most people have heard of that. It's going to be, or pescatarian, lots of seafood, olive oil, and Mediterranean eating, they do eat carbs, and they do, but a lot of them are whole grain. And two, in Mediterranean countries, their food is a little bit less processed than ours, and I don't know if you've ever talked to anyone that's like, when I go to Europe, I can eat gluten and pasta and I feel fine. And when I come back here, I cannot, and so I hear that a lot. Again, that's anecdotal, but people do feel that way.
Yes.
So, and, unless you have celiac, that's a different story, but as far as intolerance goes, if it's from something with the processing, and so, but Mediterranean with the really healthy fats and fresh food, fresh produce, is the healthiest eating pattern, or a plant-based eating pattern too. And again, that's not something that everybody wants to do, but consistently in research that shows to be the lowest risk of any kind of the chronic diseases that are lifestyle based, and the longest life expectancy and the best life expectancy. So not just living longer, but living better. And so that would be vegetarian. And there's a great population in California and Loma Linda that the Seventh-day Adventists, that they have a ton of research on, because most of them are vegetarian for religious reasons, and they live right next to other cultures, so it's not necessarily about their water or their it's about what they're choosing to eat, and they live the longest. So, and again, they've done a lot of research, if anyone's seen any of the Netflix documentaries out there, but on plant-based eating. So, so plant-based is great. You don't have to go full plant-based, and be a vegetarian, to get benefits. But a lot of that too, you can't really factor out, is it because they're eating whole real food? And so there's, or is it because of all the fruits and vegetables? Could you add a ton of fruits and vegetables and real food into an omnivore diet, which, so would be more of meat eaters, so there are a lot of questions, but I will say, for a balanced plate, and what I try to help people do is eat more fruits and vegetables, half your plate. That's an easy way to think about it. At breakfast is half of your meal berries with your cereal and your, and then at lunch is half of your meal a salad or vegetables. Dinner, same thing, is half of your plate vegetables, and then the other half having protein and carbs, depending on your activity level, and your size. So protein is really the amount of protein people need is based typically on body weight. And so I'm a sports dietitian too, so I love all the science behind it. So I look at muscle building, and protein needs and protein. The important things about protein are really to space it out throughout the day. And I would say the typical American diet tends to be low in protein at breakfast, and then highest in the evening, and probably too much in the evening. So you can get too much protein, and so a lot of people don't realize that. That a lot of people think I can just eat as much protein as I want. And it does have a high what we call thermic effective food, so it requires a lot of calories to process. It doesn't easily store as fat. All of that stuff is true. But you can't really do anything with extra protein, and you can only utilize so much at a time. And so you can't store it like you can store fat. You can't store it like you can store carbs. And so your body has to utilize it for energy, and then it will sometimes store more fat as fat because it doesn't need that, or more carbs as fat. So it's not totally benign just to eat as much protein as you want. And so I have a lot of people that were way overeating protein because it's a big buzzword right now.
Because I was sitting here thinking, we talked a little earlier that I watched or listened to a podcast about women's health specifically, and the need for protein, and that we don't get enough protein, particularly at breakfast. So I'm curious if you have a thought on protein powders. Are there ones that are better than others if you're going to make a protein shake for breakfast?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I agree with you. People do need more protein at breakfast. I am a big proponent of whole food-based protein. I'll say, just because protein powder is an ultra-processed food. Yeah. And you can't get around that. Whether tons of people have it, that in their diet, and I think it's probably one of the healthier processed foods, but it's not necessary. But it can be helpful for people if they can't get it in other ways. So it's kind of one of those things that it's not, to me, it's a last resort if you can't get real food. If that makes sense, because it is very processed. If you've ever tasted protein powder that's totally plain and not flavored and enhanced and made to taste decent, it's really not tasty. It's pretty bad. So, if people can tolerate dairy, like a Greek yogurt or something like that's going to be typically healthier. You can get it from some grains in the if you're doing quinoa bowls, or you can get it from a lot of whole food. Eggs, are great too if people can tolerate those. And if the other thing, if you're eating whole grains and vegetables too, vegetables have protein in them, you're going to get more protein from other foods too. And so that's something else that people also can work on, is getting more whole foods, and then they're going to get more protein from things other than just meat as well. So, because it is just the total grams of protein, but it is hard to get protein in if you're having, let's say, cereal, because a cup of milk is going to only have 8 grams of protein. And a lot of people are doing dairy-free milk. And there's only one really other milk that they sell that has enough protein in it. Do you guys know? I'll ask you guys a question. Do you guys know what it is out in the market that's easy to find? I mean, there might be some others that has protein in it. No. That's probably the most common one that people drink. But typically there's only 1 to 2 grams of protein per serving in that. So it's not a good source of protein at all. So it's actually soy milk. So a lot of people also don't do soy. So it's kind of, so soy, dairy, but soy milk actually has the same protein as dairy milk. And so if you're going to do a dairy alternative, that's the best one, unless you don't tolerate soy.
Got it.
Or if you have any interactions with medications with soy, which if you're on thyroid medicine, you wouldn't want to do soy products. So, but again, figuring out if you do, like, say you do a cup of yogurt in the morning, then that'll give you enough protein for most females.
Well, that's good to know, because I always put yogurt in my smoothie in the morning, but I've been adding protein mix. So I don't really need it.
You really don't. And I do recommend it for people that need to get calories in because they're trying to put mass on, because it's really easy to absorb and digest and get to. Okay. And so, but research has shown you just don't need it, for muscle development, so it's very good marketing.
Yeah.
And again, it's better if you really can't do dairy, you can't do eggs. I have some clients that really have some, allergies or other things, or just don't have time, and that's really all you're going to do. Then that is better than not getting protein, in for that meal. Right. But if you can do other things, I do recommend that. Yeah.
That's good, because that's not easy on the pocketbook. Those protein powders are expensive.
They're expensive, yeah.
They really are.
Yeah. It's a $1 billion industry, and so it is very expensive, and they have very good marketing.
Yes,
so,
they do.
Yeah, everyone thinks they need it. So.
Follows you around Facebook.
Yes.
Yeah.
It'll probably be on all of our phones now since we're talking about it.
It will.
So dumb the food down for the person listening who says, I just need to know what foods to buy to give me the best breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So name some foods that you've already given some breakfast foods for protein, yogurt, eggs, milk. Give us a few more for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah, and so for breakfast, if you're looking at other foods to add to the protein, oats are really good. Good quality bread. You mentioned, I know you're not doing regular bread if you're gluten free, but if you do regular bread, try to get something that's made locally and that doesn't stay on the shelf for 2 weeks and still look the same. There's something that's not, and so that's just another thing. So we have a lot of great places here in Springfield. I know, Breadsmith, the grocery stores around here make their own bread often. And so Neighbor's Milk, there are a lot of places that people have options. So I would recommend getting a bread from there to go with your eggs, for example. Okay. And then lunches, same thing. If, wraps or breads that are made locally, which you can find. Bowls are really easy too. So that's just another thing. If you have leftovers, I try to make it easy. So I make extra things. So if I make, for example, quinoa or brown rice, I make extra, and then I'll put together bowls that night while I'm in the kitchen.
Right.
So that way I have it just ready to grab and take to work the next day. Yeah. But quinoa is great. And then if, again, you can have leftover chicken. You can also do like the pouches of tuna and things like, it's just something easy. Right. Greek yogurt's great for lunch too. A lot of people like to have a lighter lunch, that with some, some granola that has healthy ingredients in it too. And then some fruits and veggies as well. Okay. The fruits and veggies are things that you do need to be intentional about, because it's so easy to miss those, So I chop up fruits and vegetables, at the beginning of the week and have them ready to go, already portioned out. If you don't have time for that, you can buy the trays from the store. They do a lot of that prep for you. You're going to pay a little more for that, but they do, if that's, but it is a good investment in your health. Yeah. And then dinners, I really recommend keeping it simple during the week if you are busy, which most people are. Right. And I think a lot of times we overthink it. Yeah. So if you have a few staple meals that you like my family loves tacos. They love, we usually do some sort of fish, because my family likes fish and roasted vegetables, we kind of have these staples that I always buy at the grocery store. I know we have them. And then I try to make maybe one new thing a week or maybe every other week. And so, and I love new recipes, but sometimes I just don't have the mental space for that every week.
The time.
Yeah. So, yes.
What about frozen vegetables versus fresh?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, those are just as healthy. So they freeze them typically right after harvesting. And so they retain all of the nutrients, sometimes even better than fresh, especially if it's not in season. Okay. And so frozen vegetables and fruits are really healthy. Okay. So, that's good to know. And they're easy.
Right. And they're easy. And you can keep them in your freezer, so you've always got them.
Yes. Yeah. And you can freeze, so sometimes too, as people are trying to get more fruits and veggies in, they buy too much. And then they're like, oh, all my stuff goes bad, you know. And so you can freeze your fruits and veggies that you buy fresh as well, pretty easily, like broccoli or even spinach or things like that you feel like are going to go bad before like you overbought, or you had these good intentions like the beginning of the year and then you didn't end up getting that done. So you can freeze those as well, so you don't, waste your money. Most things freeze, and you can even blend things up that and freeze like, to put in a soup or, that kind of stuff as well. Yeah. Almost everything freezes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
What about snacks?
Yes. So snacks, the healthiest snack is, again, you want to have either fruits or veggies with it always. And so and then some sort of protein. And so you could do nuts, which are really good for you. And that's a really easy portable snack. About 1/4 of a cup is a serving. Okay. If you do twice that much, you're going to get 400 calories. So they do, so 200 calories is about 1/4 of a cup. Yeah. So those do add up. So you don't want to have like an entire bag of nuts and just, snack on those absentmindedly. But they are really healthy for you and have protein and lots of vitamins and fiber. And then if you needed to do something like a bar, they have some bars that are real food bars, like a Perfect bar is an example. Some granola bars are whole grain based, but again, you would want to do a protein with that. So like a string cheese, or they have cottage cheese or yogurts, things like that work. And then, you could also do like some of the, turkeys and, that kind of stuff that people like, those little turkey sticks or different, things like that. That can be an option for people as well. And you could also do a really easy one is a peanut butter sandwich that you made yourself, on some really good quality bread with natural peanut butter or almond butter. And that actually has as much protein and healthy fiber as a bar, but it's a lot more real food based. And a fruit with that, so, and that's really good, especially if you exercise like after work or, that's a really good afternoon snack, and that can help people stay on track because peanut butter sandwiches are good.
Yeah, they are. I like that.
That's true.
As long as you don't have a peanut allergy.
So almond butter if you have a peanut butter allergy.
There you go.
or sunflower butter. There's a lot of options for that too.
Yeah. Such good stuff.
Yeah. So we've talked mostly about food. Before we wrap it up here, let's talk about moving.
Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier, we get busy with life and we get off track. And some weeks that I'm really busy, I look back at the week and I'm like, I didn't exercise once. Like I didn't have any free time. And that's false. I could have made time. But
right.
I look back on myself and my week and say, why didn't you make time for this, Tanya? And I love to exercise. So what is a practical solution and the most, or I guess the best tips you could give to us for just movement, and how many steps should we be getting in a day, and what's an easy regimen for lots of people to follow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so because if you go a week without exercise, you're going to decondition a little bit. And so, and it's going to be harder. You have to start, back. And you're not going to lose everything, but, it is important to stay consistent, at least with a few days a week. And really for overall health and vitality, they do recommend about 30 minutes every day, 7 days a week, for exercise. That's what the healthiest people do. Okay. And it is very impactful for preventing disease. So that's always going to be, one of the recommendations is that 30 minutes a day. And so the steps, having one of the watches that monitors that can help you, just to give you some of that accountability to try to get your 10,000 steps, which is about what is recommended. Okay. And that's really, you can get that from any activity. Right. Getting your heart rate up is also really healthy. And so I do recommend trying to get your heart rate in your cardio zone at least a few days a week as well. Okay. And that's going to be a little different for everyone based on age, but typically it's going to be somewhere in the 100 to 150 heart rate range, if you're looking at that. Right. So some people do a lot of walking and maybe they're in the 90 heart rate range, Here we have a lot of hills, so you could get that. But that's not often quite enough to really get your heart in better shape. Okay. And so general movement and then some cardio too, and then the strength training, and that's important too. And so if you don't have time, there are some really short interval workouts that you can do. So I would say having 3 different options. So say you have your week, that your perfect week where you have as much time as you want to exercise, you have a plan already set of when, what, and where you're going to do that. And then you have a plan B. Say it's a busy week, that you have this other option that maybe isn't quite as intense, and then you have that. And then you have a plan C where you have a really crazy week. What can you do there? Can you do a 5-minute workout before you leave the house? And so there's a workout called a Tabata. And I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's 4.5 minutes. You can get a free timer on your phone. Just search for it in your app store, Tabata timer. And it's 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, 8 rounds, 4.5 minutes. And you can do whatever activity you like. You can run in place for 20 seconds and then stand there for 10. Do that 8 times and you will get your heart rate up and you will get some benefit. And so really the mindset of something.
Yes.
Because, and like you said, I love what you said, is I could do something, and trying not to say I can't do my normal routine. So the answer is nothing. So think about the possibilities. What could I do? And so
I love the ABC.
Yeah. And you can have that for nutrition too. Kind of your, my 8, like if I am cooking at home all week, my plan B and maybe my plan C is I have to eat out. What am I going to do? Sometimes having a plan in advance can help you stay on track when you're busy and focused on something else. So just having that tool, in your toolbox can really help.
Agree.
Yeah.
And I have found in the last few years, when I'm more intentional about planning my week of food and making sure that I'm going to have vegetables integrated in that and fruits. And when you came to our office and told us that half of your plate needs to be fruits and vegetables, it just gives you a visual that never goes away. You've always got that when you get your plate out of, okay, am I reaching my half fruits and vegetables today? So it's easier to plan and to plan your week if you know that ahead of time. Because you've got to be intentional to go buy those fruits and veggies.
You do. And then, and then also look at your habits and say, okay, if I didn't buy those fruits and veggies, then what am I doing?
What am I eating?
Right. Am I going to McDonald's and using that as an excuse to go through the the drive-through? Yeah. And so, or, what am I doing? Or am I trying to find something, going to the grocery store quick on my lunch break and getting something from a salad bar, And so that's something I would just challenge all the listeners to say, what is your backup plan? And can you make that healthier? Because oftentimes we're on our backup plan.
Yeah. And honestly, any step that you can make, whether it's both, if you have a nutrition plan and it's just give it your best effort, right? I mean, one day you're going to do really well and the next day you're not, but don't take that as, oh, I'm defeated. I'm going to go out and I'm going to try this again. I love my watch because if I sit too long, like it's been going off while we're sitting here, because it's saying you need to
get
move.
up.
And I love that because it reminds me that even if I have a busy day, I can get up from the task I'm working on and I can walk through my building. And my building has a lot of stairs. So I can, take stairs and walk around the building. And that's going to help versus me just sitting there and continuing my project. And so I love that interruption that it gives me to remind me.
Yes, that is a good thing. And like you said, I think so many people are really hard on themselves. And when you have that kind of failure mentality, or I never follow through, with my plans to be healthy, you start thinking those things and telling yourself those things, then you're coming from a place of defeat instead of, what can I do? And that is a challenge for me, is just that mental aspect of it, because people, I try to help people have empathy towards themselves. Because I think we all want to be healthy, I mean, that's just as a human,
because we feel better.
Right. We feel better. And so trying to say, I want to be healthy, I am, and it's important to me and I'm doing things, it's not always gonna be perfect and that's okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and if you are trying to follow something that says you have to be perfect, or it's a very strict diet and exercise plan that you don't enjoy, maybe question that. It's probably not
true.
you. It's probably the plan,
Yeah. And you're only going to follow something that you're comfortable with, and that, you can't tell someone to never have a cookie.
No,
because that they're going to definitely go the opposite direction, because sometimes we just crave something, and sometimes, and that's okay. As long as you don't eat the whole box.
Don't eat 3 cookies.
No.
Just eat the cookie. And if you eat 3 cookies, tomorrow's a new day.
That's right. That's right. Give yourself some grace.
So
what
true.
Great information. Thank you so much for being here, Cassie. This has really been fascinating. And
absolutely.
Lots of great tips and takeaways for our client or our listeners out there. So.
Yes. We want to thank you, and thank you, Gershman Mortgage, of course, Jordan and Kate, and we will catch you guys next time.
See you then.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Simply Authentic podcast. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram.
Be sure to listen to us on your favorite podcasting app.